MicroStrategy just added another round of Bitcoin, boosting its Bitcoin holdings to 386,700. And year to date, it is up a whopping 478% as of the time of this recording. Now, I also believe that this is one of the most misunderstood stocks. People don't understand what MicroStrategy is doing, and rightfully so. There are a lot of complicated financial engineering mechanics there, and I'm here to break it all down for you so that you can understand. Don't worry, this is going to be beginner friendly. Stick around. I promise you will learn exactly what MicroStrategy is doing. And then towards the end of the video, I'll give you my plays on MicroStrategy. Let's get right into it. What is MicroStrategy? Real briefly, no, it is not a Bitcoin mining company. MicroStrategy is actually a remnant from the dot-com bubble. It is an enterprise analytics software. It has nothing to do with Bitcoin, at least originally. And before the whole Bitcoin thing, honestly, it was just hanging around by the skin of its teeth. It was barely making a profit. Some years it would even lose. And trust me, this is central to the story of why they are able to do what they are doing with Bitcoin. Now, they are definitely one of the more divisive companies on the stock market. Why? Because they are now the largest corporate Bitcoin holder. And essentially, Michael Saylor has hitched his entire wagon on the future of Bitcoin. He is a Bitcoin maximalist. So obviously, people's opinions in government and finance, etc., are split whether Bitcoin is a real thing or whether it is just another tulip mania. Nonetheless, MicroStrategy stock price continues to absolutely kill it ever since they started acquiring Bitcoin publicly in August of 2020. As a matter of fact, since August of 2020, their stock price is up 2,800%, more than Bitcoin itself, which is up around 800 to 900% during that same time. So should you buy shares of MicroStrategy or should you trade MicroStrategy options as opposed to just buying Bitcoin? Well, that all depends. Let's first understand what it is real quick that MicroStrategy does. I promise this will not be boring and will be beginner friendly. So there are essentially two ways that companies on Wall Street raise money, right? They have access to the capital markets. Remember, MicroStrategy is a company. It is not an ETF. So the two ways is either by issuing shares or equity, and two is by issuing debt. These are known as corporate bonds. You might have heard of these. These operate in the same way as government bonds, except they are more risky and usually pay a higher yield. These are the two main ways that companies raise money. Now, why doesn't a company just go out and issue shares all the time? Because of a term called dilution. You would dilute the shares for your current shareholders. If you're just issuing shares out of thin air, that means you're putting more shares into the market. That means you're diluting the value per share. That means the shareholders that have shares, their share value goes down. So companies are very careful and specific when they issue shares, but because they're publicly traded, they have to announce it. And usually you see company stock prices tank when they issue more shares. And corporate debt is exactly what it sounds like. The company says, look, we're going to be paying 5% coupon on our corporate debt if you buy our bonds. Now, they are riskier than government bonds because government bonds are all but guaranteed. But corporate bonds, if the company goes out of business, then there goes your money. So MicroStrategy is doing both of these things to do what? To buy Bitcoin. You can see here in one of their press releases, October 30th, it says MicroStrategy announces third quarter financial results. By the way, they don't make a ton of money, as we discussed earlier, and announces a $42 billion capital plan. Part of that capital plan is issuing shares, announces a $21 billion at the market equity offering. These are more shares, and then announces a target of raising $21 billion using fixed income securities. Debt. Now, as I said, they've been doing this since August of 2020, and minus this little hitch here in 2022 where everything went down, the price of Bitcoin, as I said, has appreciated about 900% since August of 2020. And we started a full-on bull market in November of 2022, both in stocks, crypto, etc. And if you look at MicroStrategy since August of 2020, here are the returns compared to stocks like Nvidia, compared to Bitcoin itself, compared to Tesla, Google, Meta, basically the Mag 7, compared to the S&P, compared to gold, compared to the NASDAQ. This, along with Michael Saylor's very eloquent press interviews, is the reason that MicroStrategy is on everybody's radar right now. So what is the risk here? Like I said, it's a remnant of the dot-com bubble. People point to the time that MicroStrategy reached a price per share, 330 thereabouts, and tanked all the way down to 40 cents. And now it's back up to 400. So people look at this as one all-encompassing performance, really ignoring the fact that this performance here has nothing to do with this performance here. But of course, anytime something sees insane swings like this over the years, people are going to be skeptical. And that is why MicroStrategy has insane options premiums, because it is very volatile. And before I get into whether MicroStrategy is investable or tradable or how I'm trading it, I just want to talk about one thing. Its recent scheme of 0% corporate bonds, right? It's offering these corporate bonds at 0%. What does this mean? That means if you give Michael Saylor's company $1 million, you're not making any interest, even though it's a bond. However, they are what we call convertible bonds, meaning that at some point in the future, you will be able to convert these bonds for shares. And it seems like he can't issue these fast enough as investors continue to gobble up these 0% convertible notes, which is really a very creative way of doing things. And the only reason I think that other companies are not doing this to the degree that MicroStrategy has is because MicroStrategy has nothing to lose. Some years it loses money, some years it makes a modest amount. We're not talking about a Microsoft here, right? If Microsoft were to do this, I mean, it would just break the internet. It would break the financial markets. So this is one of the smartest financial engineering schemes I've ever seen by a public company and a CEO. Anyway, here's the important part. This offering, 0% convertible senior notes, are due in 2029, right? So there's a lot of time value here. This is part of the reason I'll get to why MicroStrategy is trading at such a high premium compared to Bitcoin. It says here, these notes will not bear regular interest, and the principal amount of the notes will not accrete. The notes will mature on December 1st, 2029, unless earlier purchased, redeemed, or converted in accordance with their terms. Subject to certain conditions, on or after December 4th, 2026, MicroStrategy may redeem for cash all or any portion of the notes at a redemption price equal to 100% of the principal amount of the notes to be redeemed, plus accrued and unpaid special interest, if any. In this case, there aren't any. So basically, these are exactly what they sound like. They're not paying any interest. And the worst that can happen, aside from MicroStrategy going belly up, is that the investors will get their money back. They're convertible, right? Who converts them and when? The notes will be convertible into cash, shares of MicroStrategy's Class A common stock, or a combination of cash and shares of MicroStrategy's Class A common stock at MicroStrategy's election. They get to decide, not you. Prior to June 1st, 2029, the notes will be converted only upon the occurrence of certain events and during certain periods, blah, blah, blah. Now, here is the conversion rate. 1.4872 shares of MicroStrategy per $1,000 principal amount of notes. So that converts to approximately 672.4 per share, $672.4. As of the time of this recording, MicroStrategy is trading at around $400. So this is in 2029, which is 4 years from today, 3.5 years, depending on when in 2029. The bondholder is either going to get their cash back or will get shares at 672.4. So that's only about a 67% gain from where we are today. MicroStrategy can gain that in a week. It can also lose that. So investors see this as a win-win. Either they get their money back or they'll get shares of MicroStrategy at 672. And hopefully MicroStrategy is much more than that by then, depending on where Bitcoin is at. MicroStrategy's net asset value premium as of the time of this recording is 2.45. That means based on the amount of Bitcoin that it holds, right? It holds, as of the time of this recording, $36.615 billion in Bitcoin, 386,700 Bitcoin, but its current market cap is $92.986 billion. So more than its Bitcoin holding values. And no, the difference is not made up in their operational activities. Like I said, they barely make any money. So why is MicroStrategy trading at 2.45 times the amount of Bitcoin that they have on their balance sheet? One is the time value of these leveraged activities, right? So the convertible bonds, for instance, mature in 2029. So there is a time value aspect to this whole thing, right? Two, the demand for MicroStrategy shares is higher than it is for things like Bitcoin ETFs and such, right? Because it is a stock. There are a lot of funds, there are a lot of money managers, there are a lot of pension funds, etc., that cannot invest in Bitcoin or Bitcoin ETFs directly, but they can buy shares of companies. So the demand on the stock market might be higher for MicroStrategy than Bitcoin related things. And it's based on the expectation that MicroStrategy will be able to continue this money scheme with the issuing shares and the 0% debt in order to buy Bitcoin. And so that expectation Bitcoin carries a premium. Now, what are the risks of investing in MicroStrategy, right? The risks are, I think one is the obvious one, is Bitcoin volatility. We know that Bitcoin is prone to 70, 80% drops. Now, that's fine if you hold Bitcoin, but MicroStrategy as a company now has a lot of debt obligations, $7 billion in debt now total, right? By the way, not all of their debt are 0% convertible bonds. That is just the latest round. They do have some debt on their books where they are required to pay interest. You can see here, these are all the active debt obligations they have. There's this fantastic article on Seeking Alpha here that highlights what are the potential consequences if Bitcoin does fall, for instance, 80%, which it's definitely prone to do and can happen, right? 80% would put it at around $20,000 per Bitcoin. But if Bitcoin falls 80%, MicroStrategy currently has $7 billion in net debt. Under the scenario of an 80% drop in Bitcoin would be worth around $7.1 billion. So in a worst case scenario, if a debt maturity happens, MicroStrategy would be facing potential bankruptcy if Bitcoin falls by that much, right? It has debt obligations that will now be worth more than the Bitcoin that it holds at the current time. And if we look here, you could see that the price of MicroStrategy and the price of Bitcoin, this line in the blue here is called the correlation coefficient. It is so correlated to Bitcoin, it's not even funny. There are little times when it does fall out of correlation with Bitcoin, but for the most part, it's almost at a perfect correlation with Bitcoin, which is why during the bear market of 2022, you saw MicroStrategy stock go from 131 all the way down to $13 because it does follow Bitcoin's volatility. And does MicroStrategy always trade at a NAV premium? Well, most of the time, actually, yes, at least as of the current time frame. Now, there are times when its NAV premium does fall to 1 or below. That has happened before. It has happened when Bitcoin has absolutely tanked. Then you see MicroStrategy actually trade at a discount to Bitcoin. So should you trade or invest Bitcoin? I think it depends on the type of person you are. If we are in a crypto euphoric cycle, if we are in a Bitcoin/crypto bull market, MicroStrategy will trade most of the time at a NAV premium to Bitcoin. We have the data to show that. And you are much better off if you're just looking at from a short-term money-making perspective and a speculative perspective, you are much better off trading MicroStrategy than you are Bitcoin. That much is true, right? And it might be easier for you to get in and out of MicroStrategy too. However, if the price of Bitcoin tanks and MicroStrategy no longer has anybody to buy its debt, because remember how fickle Wall Street is, right? If Bitcoin's price goes from 90,000 to 19,000, you're going to hear all of these narratives on Wall Street saying this was always a tulip mania. Bitcoin is BS. This is speculative. This isn't gold. This is just funny money. This is something for teenagers and drug traffickers, etc. Right? You're going to hear those narratives. And investing public on Wall Street are going to be so turned off by the idea of giving this company money to buy Bitcoin that they will, at some point, they will face the point in which they don't have any more investors. Bitcoin has to tank for that to happen. So in my opinion, in owning Bitcoin and investing in MicroStrategy is not the same thing. I personally believe in the idea of Bitcoin. If you look at the price of houses in Bitcoin, if you look at the US dollar in Bitcoin, if you look at the price of gold in Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin retains its value, even though it's volatile, but it has retained its value over all of those things much, much better. You can disagree with me, and that's perfectly fine. I don't want to engage in a debate on crypto or on Bitcoin. If you do believe in Bitcoin, you are much better off buying Bitcoin. If all you want to do is make quick money in a bull market, MicroStrategy will appreciate at a premium to Bitcoin, and especially if you're using something like options. So there are two ways that I would trade MicroStrategy, right? As I showed you before, when we are in a bear market, MicroStrategy actually trades at a discount to Bitcoin. That, at least in the short time that they've been buying Bitcoin in the last 4 to 5 years, looks like an asymmetrical opportunity if you can hold it for 4 to 5 years, right? If you can hold MicroStrategy during the Bitcoin bear markets, you are likely to make a ton of money when Bitcoin is back in a bull market, right? That's number one. Number two, because of MicroStrategy's volatility tied to Bitcoin's volatility, MicroStrategy's premiums on selling options are so good, it's unreal. Obviously, this still comes at a risk, but you can see here today, I sold the 200 put expiring December 20th, 2024, and I'm already up 21.5% on it. I sold the 200 put for $510. That is insane because right now MicroStrategy is trading at 403. So I sold the 200 put, which if MicroStrategy's price were to drop, that would signify a 50% drop from here, and I'm getting $510 per contract. That is absolutely insane. And by the way, for the record, if MicroStrategy fell to 200, depending on where we are in the bull market, if we're in a bear market, it's a different story. But if we're still in the bull market, I'm buying MicroStrategy. So I'm okay getting assigned these, at least for the time being, right? But the premiums are so crazy that in my opinion, you are much better off selling options than you are buying options, unless you buy something like a vertical spread. So in my opinion, selling options, selling cash secured puts, this by the way was like a 0.05 delta, which is wild. But selling puts on MicroStrategy, especially on down days like this, it had a negative 16% day on November 21st, and then a 6% day followed by a negative 4% day on November 25th as of the time of this recording. So on red days, you're going to get more premium. But doing that, I think to me is easy money. And then if you end up getting assigned, obviously you can run the wheel. But that, in my opinion, is the way to play MicroStrategy. Now, obviously, if you have a penchant for risk, you can buy naked calls, but technical analysis better be on point, not only with MicroStrategy, but with Bitcoin as well, right? When we look at Bitcoin, you better have your technical analysis on point. In this case, you could say something like, we definitely have not saying Bitcoin will do this, but just as an example, you have a resistance level here, right? In the $70,000 range. So if Bitcoin broke out and is retesting that $70,000 range, then yes, you can buy calls on MicroStrategy if your risk tolerance allows for it, if you know how to exit those calls, if MicroStrategy breaks market structure to the downside, for instance, etc. But those are the ways that I would play MicroStrategy. I myself do not believe in investing in MicroStrategy. Those of you that are familiar with this channel know that I'm heavily invested in Bitcoin and have been since 2017. My first buy in Bitcoin was $900. Obviously, subsequent buys have been higher since then, but I just don't believe in MicroStrategy's ability to raise cheap money forever. I feel like there will be an expiry on that scheme, and the expiry will likely come the next time that Bitcoin has a 50, 60, 70% drop and Wall Street freaks out and they are not going to loan this company any more money, and then now they have to pay back their debt obligations with the heavily discounted Bitcoin that they have on the books, right? And by the way, this is not an indictment on Michael Saylor. I think he's brilliant. I think what he's doing is extremely creative, and I've never seen anything like it in my 20 years in finance, right? And nobody else has seen anything like it. So it's not an indictment on him. It's just, am I going to invest in this company for the long term through all of the ups and downs and the NAV decay and all that? Probably not. I will likely continue to just invest in Bitcoin and trade MicroStrategy. Anyway, I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, leave it a big fat thumbs up. Let me know in the comment section below. Are you invested in MicroStrategy? Do you trade it? How do you trade it? What is your price target? Would love to know. Do you not believe in it? Do you think that it's a Ponzi scheme, as I've heard some people call it? I want to hear all of your thoughts, guys. Anyway, if you want to join all of our trades, click on the link in the description. It is close to Black Friday. As of the time of this recording, you should see a Black Friday deal. Click on the link in the description. Trade live with me every single morning. Stay safe out there, traders. Peace.